A Georgia mother is behind bars, accused of throwing her newborn baby away to die inside a trash bag. And now, this 22-year-old mom is facing attempted murder charges. I'm going to be speaking with Georgia criminal defense attorney Meg Stickler to get to the bottom of this devastating case, potential defenses, and explore what other options this mother may have had, including Georgia's safe haven law. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A 22-year-old Georgia woman is facing serious charges, including basically an attempted murder charge, after authorities say she abandoned her newborn baby boy in a trash bag on her back porch before seeking medical treatment for herself. Oh, by the way, without ever telling her boyfriend or doctors she had just given birth. You wish this could be something that I'm just, making up, but no, I'm not. These are the allegations. And wait till you hear how authorities say the baby was discovered, and tell me that won't just break your heart. This disturbing chain of events began in the early hours of March 31st, when Alaynah Rappuhn allegedly gave birth at her home on Peyton Street in Georgia's Bibb County. And instead of seeking help for the child, deputies say she wrapped the baby boy in towels, placed him inside of a trash bag, and left him on the porch. Hours later, when she began suffering from excessive bleeding, her boyfriend rushed her to the hospital, unaware that the couple's child was still outside fighting for his life. So here's what we know, according to a media release from the Bibb County Sheriff's Office. Now, Rappuhn's boyfriend apparently noticed her medical condition and called 911. Took her to Piedmont-Macon Hospital's emergency room. Now, before leaving, Rappuhn had placed a trash bag on the back porch, something that didn't initially raise suspicion because it's not really an odd thing to do, right? But police say there was a very alive baby inside that trash bag, something Rappuhn's boyfriend didn't realize when the two of them initially left their home. But allegedly, he realized it when he returned. According to the sheriff's office, after ensuring Rappuhn was receiving care at the hospital, the boyfriend, whose name has not been released, returned home to gather some belongings, and that is when he made this heartbreaking discovery. The sheriff's office writes, a noise caught his attention coming from the bag. This is the trash bag that Rappuhn had thrown out earlier. Upon checking the bag, the infant was found wrapped in towels. The infant was alive, breathing, struggling inside this bag. The baby was immediately transported to the hospital following this, as per the sheriff's office, though it's unclear if the boyfriend took the baby himself or called police after making the discovery. But medical staff confirmed the baby boy was in critical but stable condition. The Bibb County Sheriff's Office reports that Rappuhn kept this pregnancy a complete secret. According to the media release, it was reported that Rappuhn didn't let her boyfriend know that she was pregnant or that she had the child when he came home. It was also reported that Rappuhn didn't notify medical staff that she had the child upon arriving for medical treatment. So not only did she allegedly leave her boyfriend in the dark, but she also never even mentioned it at the hospital, the very place where she was being treated after, giving birth. And one important thing to mention is the timeline here. That investigators say Rappuhn had the baby at around 4:30 in the morning, but she didn't end up going to the hospital until the afternoon, when her boyfriend called 911 after the excessive bleeding. So that means that both she and this baby went without medical attention or treatment for hours. And after being treated and released from the hospital, Rappuhn was taken into custody by Bibb County Crimes Against Children investigators on April 1st. She was booked into the Bibb County Detention Center on charges of criminal attempt to commit felony murder, reckless abandonment of a child, and first-degree cruelty to children. She appeared in court on April 2nd for a bond hearing where she faced a judge for the first time.
All right, Ms. Rappuhn, case number B25-27894. Ma'am, you're being charged with criminal attempt to commit murder, cruelty to children in the first degree, and reckless abandonment. Do you understand the 3 charges being presented against you?
Yes, sir.
All right, how old are you, Ms. Rappuhn?
22.
You said 22?
22, yes, sir.
22. Last grade of school you completed?
High school graduate, senior year.
Good deal, good deal. You understand what's going on in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Do you feel you need a commitment hearing?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna set you up for a commitment hearing. The bond's gonna be denied at this time. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask Attorney Chasteen?
So the bond was denied, meaning she's going to remain in jail as this case proceeds. And as you heard there, court also scheduled a commitment hearing or a preliminary hearing. So we actually checked out Rappuhn's profile on Truthfinder, just had to put her name and location. She popped up within seconds. And according to the powerful background checker, she doesn't have a criminal history, but did pull some information out about possible relatives and where she lived. And look, Law&Crime, we partner with Truthfinder. It's amazing. We use it to get details on people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. After all, it's one of the largest public record search services in the United States. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So right now, if you're interested, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Okay, I want to bring on a special guest to talk more about this. I'm joined right now by Georgia criminal defense attorney Meg Stickler. Meg, thanks so much for coming on. I know this is not an easy case to talk about. Do you see these cases a lot, unfortunately?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am not a fan of cruelty to children cases, period. Children are the most vulnerable pieces of population that I hate them. I actually hate these kinds of cases. But with that said, I'm going to give you my criminal defense lawyer mindset on this case. She's 22. And I spent a lot of time in Macon. I love practicing in that district, the middle district of Georgia. I don't do state cases there, but I do a lot of federal cases there. So I'm in Macon all the time. So I looked up the address, and she's only a mile or two from the hospital. So we can't argue it's a rural issue, like she's too rural. But I will tell you from just personal experience, that area is really poor. Macon has a really poor population, and it looks to me, is from a lower income area, which means she has lack of resources, lack of education, and lack of knowledge, perhaps, of the safe haven laws that we all have across the state, across the nation. We have it everywhere. Now, I feel compassionate here. We don't know all the storyline here. Was she a victim of abuse? That's the first thing I came up with, is that she's a victim. And so she is in denial. She's in shock. She's in everything. And she doesn't want to talk about this because this baby could have been, again, I'm jumping here, but that's the first thing that came to my head, was that she's sexually abused and this may not be the boyfriend's baby. I mean, who knows? But I was already jumping to other thought processes, which makes her less criminal.
So a lot of things there, right? I've seen cases before where you have young mothers and they will bury the baby. They will throw the baby out thinking the baby was dead. Now, I wonder if that's something that will be explored here. Now, obviously, the baby wasn't. You hear the boyfriend heard noises from the baby. I imagine if we just, and I'll get into Georgia's safe haven law in a minute, but that avenue, right? Because you try to understand what could have led somebody to do this. What would have led somebody, hey, just drop the baby off somewhere else, But the idea of putting the baby in the trash bag, how do you justify that? So if she thought the baby was dead, would that be a legal defense?
It is. And again, it goes back to an inability to have medical resources. Will we learn that she had any kind of medical treatment with an OBGYN prior to now? Will we learn more information about this pregnancy, number one? Because if she had had a doctor and services, if she felt something, because A, she knew was pregnant, and B, knew the baby was coming, she would have called the doctor and said, I'm having pains, okay? And then that would have led the doctor to kind of say, hey, I think something's happening, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I think that's not what occurred here. She may not have known she was pregnant, which, I always have difficulty believing that one, but it does occur. And then more importantly, was the baby not alive in her mind? Now, I want to point out one more thing. When you give birth, even to if the fetus is only 20 weeks old, 26 weeks old, it's still not a fun process. I'm not trying to be funny when I say that. I'm saying it's an awful experience, period. So she's undergoing a trauma delivering that baby on her own, number one. And number two, you have the hormones happening. You have a complete hormone crash when the baby comes out, and there's a lot of that going on. So you have ignorance, you have hormones, and then you have no medical help, no support system. She very well could have thought that baby was not alive, hence why it was in a trash bag.
But I'll counter that by saying, it's not like she gave birth and left the baby right on the floor and ran out. I mean, to put it in a trash bag, to hide it, that's what the allegation would be. And I guess the question is, if you don't know about Georgia's safe haven law, is ignorance of the law a defense? And by the way, right, Georgia's safe haven law allows mothers, right, to surrender their newborn safely. They have 30 days from birth to do it. If you don't know about that, is that a defense? I mean, is that ignorance of the law a defense?
Well, that's why I went to the abuse part. And I just immediately jumped to that conclusion that there's some sort of dysfunction happening in this family. Because if you're already kind of freaked out about going to authorities for some other reason, by all means, let me go to the police station and hand the baby over. Again, I'm not defending her actions per se.
Sure.
I'm just coming up with some thought processes that may have occurred in her mind. So ignorance of the law is never a good excuse here. But what I think will be very useful here is all the mitigating aspects. We don't know what they are yet. Could there have been drugs? Could there have been drug abuse? Could she be an addict? We don't know. I mean, we don't know what the family support system is. Do we know if she's had any other children? Has DFACS, the Department of Family and Children's Services, been involved in her world prior to this week? These are all things we'll learn, and this will help develop mitigating information that would hopefully, get her out on bond right now. I find it kind of reprehensible they didn't give her bonds. That's my own personal opinion.
Do they usually would give bond in a case like this?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm going to give you my opinion. All right. And so in my opinion, and I'm a good lawyer, so when I'm in there arguing, I would have argued all of these things to give her bond. Okay. Because the criminal attempt is I think you said murder. Well, that gets a little dicey. And if it's murder, it's one of those, what we call 7 deadly sins. She can't get bond. Okay. But I didn't look up the statute as to what she's specifically charged with.
Yeah.
So maybe that statute.
So yeah, the way that we understand it and the way that it's being reported, Georgia's criminal attempt of felony murder. So
That's first degree.
So that's first degree. What is, and is that basically attempted murder? And what do you have to prove to establish that?
Well, I'm guessing, and again, I'm only guessing here, is that the police are not the prosecutors. So I kind of think they were very good with their immediate thought process on how this case will ultimately be indicted. Okay. First degree cruelty to children is the felony that makes it the felony murder because you were committing the cruelty to children, and that's what had the baby die. So that is how you get to felony murder. So, it could very much elevate. We don't know yet. So I don't know, but I have a feeling that's why the judge was like, look, I'm not touching this. Let y'all figure it out. Because what happens next is a lawyer like me files a motion to set bond, gets the other side, the prosecution, to do a consent bond so that we don't have to have a hearing. We waive the preliminary hearing. We don't bother with that because, at least in Georgia, and years ago we used to love prelims, but we don't do them as much. And so we argue, hey, we'll waive that. We'll just let the system move forward. And that's when we get into the mitigating. We go ahead and get her some medical treatment. We go ahead and get her some mental health treatment. We go ahead and find out what's happening here, get a more drawing of the picture here, and work on the case. I think she'll get out on bond.
Yeah, you make a very strong argument for how she might be able to get out on bond. I don't know about the idea of her being found, not guilty in the sense. Put aside the murder charge.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, that's fine. No, you've raised interesting defenses, and it makes me think. And I say, put the murder charge to the side, or this criminal attempt to commit felony murder, the reckless abandonment and the cruelty to child, and this is the way cruelty to child is: a parent, guardian, or other person supervising the welfare or having immediate charge or custody of a child under the age of 18 commits the offense of cruelty to children in the first degree when such person willfully deprives the child of necessary sustenance to the extent that the child's health or well-being is jeopardized. I mean, that's a charge that carries 5 to 20 years in prison, my understanding is. That feels like a straightforward case for prosecutors, unless I'm looking at it the wrong way.
It's a case where you're feeling badly for the 22-year-old because she's a child, and then you're feeling more horrible about this poor baby who wasn't given a chance. I mean, and the baby's still alive at this minute, but is that going to remain the case? We don't know yet. And so there's so many more moving parts as why these kinds of cases are so much more difficult, because it's so emotionally driven. But speaking as a lawyer, you better bet that if we went to trial, the prosecution's got a completely perfect case. I mean, it fits the elements perfectly. And first degree child cruelty, I've had those cases more than, I can't count. I've had a good many of them through the years. There's multiple degrees of them as well. And to get it down to a misdemeanor is laughable. I don't fathom that happening. I do think she's got a seriously rough road ahead of her. But that's why I keep arguing the mitigating is when we've got an insurmountable hill, we've got to find a way to kind of say, well, what do we do? I mean, we got to find some way to mount this hill. And that's why I keep bringing up the mitigating. It's the only thing we have.
So, and you bring up a very unfortunate potential consequences. This baby, we hope this baby recovers 100%, but there is a chance of the worst and the baby could die. And if that's the case, you think she would be charged with murder?
I do. The prosecution has to do their job. And we do need to say, look, let's use these kinds of cases. If you Google these kinds of cases, not just in Georgia and other states, this keeps happening. This keeps happening. And that's the part that really just bothers me. If you read articles about the safe haven laws, there are organizations that work to educate rural places, poor places, in high schools and health classes, PE classes, fill in the blank, and yet it still occurs. So how do we fix this? This I don't know, but I think something's got to give. I mean, these poor babies.
When you hear about
a lot of trouble with this.
The Georgia Department of Human Services said the law has been used nearly 80 times since it first went into effect back in 2002. Now, some would say that's a large number. Some would say that's actually small number, right? Yeah.
Teeny number. And that's why I'm saying there's got to be a disconnect here where dysfunction prevents people from going into law enforcement or police stations or fire stations. Or is the law written in such a way that you got to leave it with staff? Can you leave it on the front door? Are people just so scared to trust the government? Who knows? But we've got to figure out a way to make it easier. And I love the fact the law exists. I mean, it's basically saying you get criminal immunity. We don't care what the story is, give us the baby and we'll move on. So it's a great law. But 80 times in 20 some years, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's tiny. I can tell you that from experience. Tiny.
Let me ask you this. I think a large portion of this case, and you mentioned it before, comes down to whether or not she knew she was pregnant. Yeah. If she didn't tell anybody, right? And we assume that she didn't tell the boyfriend, and put that to the side about how the boyfriend wouldn't know. Right. What would be evidence to suggest she knew she was pregnant if she didn't, text anybody about it? If she didn't, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, what are the ways that you'd be able to prove it?
Oh, easily. I mean, just like all my cases, technology. You know what I mean? Technology is the law enforcement's wonderful tool. If they somehow went and got her phone, this is 100,000 pages in a Celebrite report. This thing tells people so much data. So if she texted, posted anything, emailed about this, had gone to the doctor in the past 9 months, anything that she was told she was
Google search.
Yes, we're in trouble. We're in her house. Did she buy any baby anything? I mean, I having been pregnant 4 times, I can't imagine you not knowing, but I know it happens. So I'm not trying to say that people wouldn't know because you hear stories about it. But it's if she knew, I think it'll be provable rather easily through technology, 100%. Because they not only can track her car. In other words, where did the car go? They can track the local services. They can go to Planned Parenthood type places and find out if she went there. They can go to Piedmont. Did she ever visit that one again? They can go to the other hospitals there in Macon.
It's interesting because, well, if she gives birth, wraps the baby in towels, puts the baby in the trash bag, you make a good point about what is someone feeling in that moment, the hormones. Because another person would look at it and say, if you really were shocked you gave birth, you'd immediately call 911. You would immediately say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just gave birth. So the prosecution would argue, nope, she knew what was happening and she immediately had a plan.
The thing that I can't wrap my brain around, and I'm not trying to get too detailed, but it's not a pretty process. No. And that part, I have a lot of trouble wrapping my brain around of you being in your home and then wrapping it up into a trash bag. And then your boyfriend says, how you doing, girlfriend? Oh, I'm really hurting. I'm bleeding, profusely. that I just can't wrap my head around. I can't wrap my head around how those steps occurred. I can't, because again, not to get detailed, there's just an enormous amount of blood. And there's also, you have to deliver the placenta after. So if she didn't do that properly, that could have been something that caused some problems where she definitely had to go in to get help. I mean, who knows? But I always, when I hear these stories, how did you do it at home alone at 4 a.m? Where was the boyfriend then?
Yeah. That time, what do you make of that timeline? 4:30 in the
I don't
morning
get it.
till, that's a long time.
And again, there goes for more data. Even though she may be from a more lower income area, for the most part, all of us have Ring cameras and such. And I can tell you from experience doing drug cases down there in Macon, they have a million pole cams. They have a million just cams everywhere, so that they could pretty much figure out her movements in and around that house. And that might help build a timeline as to her knowledge, when the baby actually may have been born. These very important parts that would then put into perspective the boyfriend's statements. Are they true or are they not true?
That's what I was going to ask you. So to be clear right now, there's nothing to suggest that the boyfriend's statements are not true, that he's a party to this in any way. But you do have to ask the question, how did he not know she was pregnant?
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to your boyfriend, I mean, I'm assuming they were living together. And that night, were they not sleeping together? But more importantly, in past, were they not sleeping together? How did you not notice a change, gaining weight? Again, when you're young like that, super, super young, you saw her on the jail hearing. She looked super, super young. And you can not necessarily show full 9 months. When you're this young, she's it is easy. But the boyfriend is there every minute. I may not notice, you may not notice, but if you're living with her or your significant other, you're being intimate with her. I mean, really? I don't believe it.
What can we expect from an upcoming commitment hearing?
Good question. Now, that's a lawyer choice. We've talked about with the bonds. Sometimes we're offered, hey, if you waive that preliminary hearing, we'll give you bond. So I'm always like, sure, could care less. I already know that there's going to be probable cause to bind this case over to get it indicted. That's a no-brainer. Now, some cases, that's different. Let's be clear. This case, waive that and get it over with. Now, if they end up having the preliminary hearing, it's a great thing. I teach evidence. It's a great thing to have, wait a minute, everybody's writing down everything they say. It's called prior testimony at that point. They have been at a hearing and they testify, meaning the law enforcement, the boyfriend, the medical people, and everything they say has now been written in stone. And none of us can say the same thing twice. So it's very good cross-examined fodder for the future.
Does defense have an opportunity to present a counter narrative, to question the witnesses, in any which way? What's the defense's role during the commitment hearing?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I do. Okay. What I like to do.
Well, you're the standard now. You're our standard. Yeah. You're our Georgia standard. So whatever you do, we're jumping on.
Prelims. Yeah. I love prelims, and I've been practicing since a good minute. And so, in the past, they used to be much more prevalent, and they were so much fun because you'd I don't say bend the rules, but you'd push the limits a little bit. And so I would say, is there any video statements? Is there any audio statements? Is there any other recordings? Did you do a Celebrate report? And I make them limit the discovery in their testimony, so that in the future I can then cross-examine them and be like, well, you said in the prelim you didn't have X, you said in the prelim you didn't have Y, and then it's again very useful. Now the judge will admonish me and say this is not an appropriate question, but you best believe I always ask them, always, and I get some answers.
I'm sure you do. Before we go, one other thing I wanted to ask you about was, again, is this a defense under Georgia law? Postpartum depression. I'm just asserting this right here. If there was a time period between birth and when she decided to do this with the trash bags, I'm not a doctor, but does postpartum depression kick in immediately? Have you seen cases where it's asserted? Is it a successful defense in some way? Just something we could be thinking of.
It's a good question. And I think I would structure it a little bit more broadly, and then that's why I keep saying the mitigating. What was her mental health prior to that situation? Was she on any medications? Did she go off the medications when she got pregnant? Again, that goes to knowledge, but But these, if you go off mental health medications, it causes some problems and can make your brain chemistry gets kind of messed up. And then couple that with hormones, it's just a recipe for situations like this, disaster. So I would just couch it just a little bit differently and just mention pregnancy, having the baby, and those kinds of things, and not limit it to the postpartum part. I'd put the whole storyline in, and you better believe I use it. And you need to, because it's real. It's all real.
It's this is a disturbing case. It's a really tough one to talk about. As of now, at the time of this recording, this infant remains hospitalized in critical but stable condition. Again, we are wishing nothing but a successful and healthy recovery for this baby. This baby deserves a chance at life after what a way to enter the world. Authorities have not yet released details about his long-term care, whether he's going to be placed with family or enter the foster system. But meanwhile, Ms. Rappuhn awaits her next court appearance as investigators continue piecing together the timeline of events. And I will just say, we've talked about the Georgia Safe Haven law, but also for those of you in need of resources, the National Safe Haven Alliance operates a 24-hour hotline at 1-888-510-2229. If you need help, if you need information, definitely encourage you to call that number. Meg Stickler, thank you so much for taking the time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.